Welcome to the Chasing Your Dreams podcast, a place for you to find the wisdom and powerful strategies for overcoming obstacles and making your dreams come true. Here is your host, Eric Hall.
Hello, I'm Eric Hall, and I'm looking forward to have you guys join me, as I launch the podcast for sure. Today is just an introductory of the podcast, just kind of laying the framework to let you know a little bit about the podcast, let you know a little bit about me, and kind of what I'm looking forward to doing here with this podcast for sure. The purpose of launching it is just so that you guys can start to hear stories from all over the world, from different individuals, just along the lines of just about chasing their dreams and going after things that they aspire, to be chasing since the time they was even young, right? And more of what I even focus on is like, with any journey, it's going to be some downs, right? But really knowing how to fight through those and understanding how over the course of time, your goals and things can actually change, right? So just a little bit about myself, my upbringing. I won't definitely give out the whole story today because we have more than enough time to kind of, jump into different things as I have guests on. But, for starters, man, my dreams, one of the biggest things that really inspired me to do this is that my dreams didn't die in my own home when I was young, right? So growing up in a small town, Hamlet, North Carolina, born in Rockingham, it was many opportunities for my dreams and stuff to just kind of fall by the wayside, whether it was just temptation in the streets, me not wanting to always do the right things when I was younger, whatever the case may be, but just so many different things, right? But my mother had me, and at the time that she had me, my grandmother actually took me away from my mother because that was old school, right? Like they didn't allow, my mom and dad wasn't married, so they had took me for a period of time, which why, for a long period of time, I was actually referring to my grandmother as my mother, and my mother is just her regular name, Thomasina, which people find strange. But man, me and my mother is close as anybody in this world, and always have been because I wasn't there long. It just I had a hard time getting it out of me after I was programmed that way of doing so for so long. But she's been my number one fan and part of the reason why I'm able to reach all the goals and things that I've been able to do. It's no way possible that I'm here today, accomplishing a lot of the things that I have going through college, playing football on the college level, playing some semi-pro arena, you name it. She's been there every step of the way. So I give, kudos to my mother, Thomasina Wall. And, I know times and things wasn't easy, right? So I'm big on, people not letting their dreams die in their own home. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, man, and I work with a bunch of clients from children and adolescents to adults. And I'm big on no matter who you are, right? Not like, let's not let your dreams die in your own home. And it starts even with their early environment, right? Like really when kids are getting reared. The biggest thing I give my mother like praise for is that, my father died when I was young. My father died when I was 11 years old. And there was many different things at that particular time that she could have did, right? But one of the best things she ever did was at that particular time, she understood her son. She understood that at that point in time, I felt like I was ultimately becoming the man anyway, even though I knew I wasn't. It was just like a pride thing. And where I grew up at, we was always confident. And, once my dad passed away, something just strikes in you that you start to feel like, I got to be the man. Like I got to do everything to make sure we're safe and all those things that you're not necessarily ready for at that age. Well, my mother, instead of telling me, nah, you're not the man, you're not this, you're not that, she never beat me down or like even crashed my dreams. She just looked at me in my eyes and told me one night, like, yo, go ahead and cry, get it out. She even took me, to the funeral home of where the body was to make it become real to me and show me on the little platform that they showed the name on to show me my father's name and let me know that he wasn't coming back. So she told me to, go ahead and get it out. Anything you got to do, go ahead, because when you leave here, you definitely got to be that man that your father wanted you to be, but more so you do got to be the man of the house. And I didn't take that lightly because, man, it's strange how things happen in life. At that particular time in school, I would not lie and tell you I was the best student by a long shot. Even at that particular time, man, I was going to summer school, and what happened was, the family was celebrating actually me being promoted to the next grade. So I was going from the fifth to the sixth grade. I had to go through summer school, and ultimately, part of my reward was I wanted to see Batman. The family was going to go see Batman. We ended up going to see it. We left and went. We seen my father prior to going. He was supposed to meet us there. He never showed, not really knowing what was going on that particular time. I just remember everybody running in to get my mother. and really trying to, shield me and my little sister away from what was really going on at the time, Dorothy Hall. We really had no clue that our world was about to really be turned upside down at that particular time. And, I just kind of remember as I reflect on that moment, man, just kind of all the chaos that was going on around us. But I remember, going into the hospital and seeing like my mother break down and stuff like that. So in that moment, I kind of knew, like, I had never seen my mother like in so much hurt, so much pain. I just knew that it was detrimental. Like I kind of figured, like my father wasn't coming back. I had, I like anybody else when it first happened, I had dreams and aspirations that even that wasn't true, right? Like he'll be back, but that's not how things played out. My father was gone. He was gone forever. He still is, and I miss him to this very day. But I prided myself on, anything I do believe he looks over me. I do believe he'll be proud at the man I've become. And I believe, my dreams didn't have to die at that particular time because that was a pivotal time in my life where it could have went one way or the other. And just the support of my mother through that whole process, man, I mean, was very monumental, man. Like I got lucky to have some great uncles in my life that really looked out for me and tried to show me the ropes, even though I gave them a hard time as well because I was trying to do my own thing. And I believe a lot of, just my drive and my demeanor and things like that just came from really nobody really crashing or telling me I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, and let me find my own niche, right? Because I did that coming from a family being the first one to really go to college, to a 4 year university, the first one in the family to graduate college. And I can promise you, not too many people at that particular time would have believed that to be the case, like not to believe it was true. But I did. I looked around in my environment, when I was young, and I seen that really wasn't anybody in college. Like we had love, like we didn't have a bunch of money, but we always were close knit. We had each other. If I needed something, they had me. We had, and if something was going down, we always had each other back more than anything. I learned a lot, in that environment. I always just wanted for more, man. I can remember having conversations even with my grandmother at times, just like sitting back and telling her, like, one day, man, I'm gonna be the richest person in the world, like, just dreaming like any child would. But on a deeper level, I was saying that our circumstances would get better. And, ultimately they have, for me, my family, everybody included, because as I get better, I believe everybody in my family circle gets better, and that's been part of the growth along the way for me and my family unit. But part of me being able to be the one that blazed that trail was, I was the first. Then my sister went on, she went to college. I got cousins that went on to college. But more importantly, man, I watched like my mother and her twin sister, Tommy Jean Douglas, going back to college. They also have master's degrees. They're doing all kind of things out here, with helping the youth, and they do a lot of giving back and things to that nature as well. Over the course of my time, one of the things that I find to be the most beneficial is I've constantly, even though I don't care how much I accomplish, how much I continue to grow, I'm always able to call on them for like advice. I'm always, before I take and do anything, I'm asking them what should I do, how should I move, what's their thoughts. So that support system has always been there for me, even to this very day. So even, it doesn't matter how old you get, you're always gonna need help. Like, and I want people to understand, like sometimes you got to reach out and try to get that help. And I'm one prime component of that, like really just seeing how things ultimately plays out, right? As I grew, man, going to college was the easy part for me at some point, right? Because once you start seeing football letters and stuff like that in high school, and you start to really see it's easy for you to make a decision on which way you want to go. Because at that particular time when I was younger, anybody that went to school with me, especially through like those early years, they'll tell you I did not like football at all, which is crazy. Like I was strictly all basketball. I love basketball. I just ended up running into some coaches that realized, like, look, man, you're gonna probably be better at football. You have a better opportunity to get out of here because at Richmond Senior High at the time, more athletes were going to college from football than they were for basketball, which is a true story. And me not really knowing what I was thinking at that time, man, I just started looking, and man, that was the years where those teams were winning championships like left and right, man. So you're talking about going to the football games and just being able to dream as a kid, watching the Michael Waddell's, the Marcus Ellerbys, do their thing and put shows on out there like you had never seen before on a football field. Along the way, man, I started to like the game after trying to initially go out there and get myself cut, right? Like I didn't like the idea of going out there getting hit, being hit, or hitting others at that particular time, because my mindset wasn't necessarily wired like that yet. I was just thinking I would be the next NBA player, whatever the case may be. Um, but at the end of the day, man, they took some time away from what I used to do with basketball, because growing up, man, that's what we did on the North Yard in Diamond Heights, Hamlet, North Carolina, pretty much every day, whether it was at the park, in the streets, it didn't really matter, man. You just kind of played basketball 24/7. And, ultimately getting out of that, man, when I really had to dedicate and start to put time into football, it was hard initially. And, one of the things that really happened along the way, man, was that I had Coach Norton and Mr. Bird. I really didn't like them at that particular time, because they was forcing me to do something that I didn't necessarily see value in at that particular time. But this again is where your mother comes in and be important to see something more than you see in yourself, because although I went out there trying to get cut and not look like I was good or not interested, they just called my mother and told my mother straight up, like, yo, I think something wrong with your son. Like, I'm trying to tell her, like, nah, ain't nothing wrong with me at all. But and because I was looking so bad out there, they told my mother that they thought I was taking drugs, which was funny. This the first time my mother didn't believe a word that I was saying. I adamantly denied it, and she just was she won't trying to hear it because of how bad they were telling her I looked out there. Well, she ended up taking me to get drug tested. And of course, I was telling the truth, because I've never used not one drug or drunk alcohol a day in my life, even to this very day. But that was a eye opener for her, right? Like, to believe what your son was saying. But it was also an eye opener that it shouldn't have got to that point. I knew I could do better. I knew I was cheating myself. And I owed myself, like, if I could actually be good at the game, to give it every opportunity for me to be successful. And that's ultimately what I started doing, man. Who knew that ultimately one day that would lead to a college opportunity for me, man. And going to college, when I say it was the easy part, initially when you start trying to wrap your mind around, okay, what do you want to go to college for? Well, for me, man, it was like, okay, I want to somehow always be attached to the game. I didn't start loving this game of football and start putting so much time into it. I figured, okay, why not go for sports medicine, which was good. Well, at the time when I ended up going to Fayetteville State, ultimately I thought that I was in a program that was going to be up and running and good to go. But then that's when you find out, boy, them coaches, boy, Coach Kenny Phillips, man, I miss him to this day, but they'll tell you what they need to tell you to get you on that campus. But I found out that program wouldn't have been accredited in 2007, and I was set to graduate 2006, so that wasn't necessarily going to work for sure. So at the time, only thing I realistically did was just look in the curriculum and see what ultimately everything would cross over into, like what would be the best thing for me to do with these credits I didn't took. And the only thing that took at that particular time was criminal justice. I remember discussing the issue, talking to my mother, trying to figure out, like, what do I do? Do I try to transfer? Do I stay with criminal justice, the whole 9 yards? Ultimately, I made a decision to stay. I said, listen, I'm gonna stay, but if I'm gonna stay and do this degree, I need to be like I need to try to be the best. Ultimately, that's the road that I and the path that I started to take, and I decided I want to be a special agent, whether with the FBI, SBI, whatever the case may be, and which became a dream that I realistically started to chase. Right, so I got my bachelor's in criminal justice. Then I actually went back and got my master because I got lucky, man. The guy that was my recruiter and looking like really trying to help me really blaze his path into the FBI, he actually played on my team at Fayetteville State. Was a tight end for the school. I won't call his name because of what he does today, but he really was instrumental in really helping me like do everything that I needed to do to get my show on the road. So I went back, got my master's in criminal justice, and lo and behold, you sit here today and realize I'm not an FBI special agent. So ultimately, something must have went wrong, right? Like that was a dream. I chased it until I couldn't necessarily chase it no more. So I would tell you exactly what went wrong. I got to a point to where, it was just certain jobs I didn't want. Like, for example, I didn't want to be an informant. I didn't want to go in the neighborhoods of guys that looked like me, trying to bust them, trying to befriend them, bust them, anything like that. Ultimately, that's just not a calling I seen on my life. And, I started the whole process. And, through that process, I learned a lot, from you be having to pick different states that you could potentially live in, all kind of things. But ultimately, when I got my paperwork to go to training in Oxford, Virginia, it just wasn't matching up. Like it just wasn't matching what I seen for myself. And I remember talking to my family trying to figure out what ultimately do I do? Like, do I go ahead and move forward? or do I, go back to the drawing board? Because at the time I went ahead, man, we had kind of sped up and got did everything we needed to do. I got married because she would have had to be married before to me before I actually went into the FBI and all kind of stuff. Like we was ready, like we did everything that we needed to do to dot our I's, cross our T's, but it just wasn't meant to be because that's just something that I wasn't willing to bid on, right? So I chased that dream till I really couldn't chase it no more. But I got lucky because, like initially, my I knew my vision had to change. Like my attention had to go somewhere else. So I got lucky, man, because in 2006, man, my last year on the football field, it was a place TNT Youth Services, man. Robert Davis at the time he had ran that agency, man. And he was like one of the biggest guys doing something back down in that time in Richmond County. I was playing my last year, and he asked me like he had started his own practice. He was like, "Listen, man, you need to come back sometime. Like you need to come back, talk to some of these guys, let them know like people from the neighborhood can go out and do things. Like let them know, let them see people come from the neighborhood be successful." I was like, all right, cool, I can do that for sure. Like, how much you charge me? I won't charge you anything. Well, I did that a couple of times, man, and ultimately, who knew that one day that would turn into my first job, right? Like, no soon as I finished, that became my first job in mental health in 2006, not knowing that ultimately I would take a liking to the field and be in this field to this very day. At the time, it was just one on one. You worked one on one with a client. You would just take them out, really have fun, try to teach them life skills, do different things, right? Like that's all that we could do. But everything became enjoyable because through that process, what he noticed as I made those connections, those guys, if I was gone, they would miss me, whatever the case may be. If I wasn't at the job, they would ask questions for me. They were looking for me. Ultimately, like someone had to start coming to games, all kind of stuff, right? So everything happened for a reason. I do believe that at some point in time, after I initially started, TNT went ahead and sold to Superior Healthcare, which at the time was one of the bigger mental health agencies out there, with all the practices and stuff, different locations and stuff that we had. And during the time, I didn't want to skip any steps. So anybody that know the field, I started out as an associate professional, climbed to a qualified professional. At that time in the Sand Hills catchment area, it was just like many audits. Like every time you turned around, it was an audit almost, right? And what I prided myself on doing, anything they seen somebody doing good, I don't care what level they was on, I used to always just pay attention. I ain't do a lot of talking. I just tried to do it better. Like I used to just try to do it better and not knowing that people was really paying attention. At that particular time, I hadn't really met, like I had met one of the owners, the wife, but I hadn't yet met the owners of like Jason Jones, Michael Pulley, like the main guys at the agency yet, like on a one-on-one level, anything like that. But ultimately, who knew that that was about to become as part of the process through the FBI screening process? They started to do my background check. They had to reach out to him and find out more about me. And to them, that was like, hold on, this guy, we got somebody working with us about to leave and go to the FBI. Who we need to know a little bit more about this guy. They got me to come up to the Charlotte office. We end up talking, really trying to hash out anything that needed to take place. And I was just kind of letting them know at that particular time it wasn't nothing they could do to keep me because I had really, like, I had my mind made up on what I was going to do. And at that particular time, just kind of understanding like the landscape, it was best for me to go ahead and go into the FBI. I wasn't necessarily like I hadn't chased this dream. And when that's what I mean by knowing what I know, like I hadn't put in all that work, it was no way I won't gonna keep chasing that dream until I couldn't obtain it. But they did make some interesting offers, man. They offered to get me like this Lexus truck that they had, and they did. They offered to get me a house. I mean, they ended up overnight switching my salary. I was making at the time probably $30,000 to overnight going to $100,000, which is crazy. But it really set me up early in life to really get a step ahead. Didn't last too long, but it really gave me a step in the right direction because it wasn't shortly that I realized that you don't really just chase and do things simply because of money. Although that dream and me taking that, really taking that on wasn't only about money. I didn't really look at the fine print in the sense of some of the expectations and how they would change over the course of time. In the sense of traveling from place to place, wanting to be in Charlotte one day, whether or not we got Atlanta, whether you're gonna have to go there one day, could you do it? Can you go to Virginia a day? Like I started to really look around and understand, man, like I was never really home, man. Like I was never in the Fayetteville area where I had to kind of set up, and that just wasn't gonna work. Really having I had pretty much had a wife, and at the time I had two of my daughters. My third hadn't yet came, but ultimately just kind of looking back over over the whole thing, it just wasn't long term. It wasn't going to work for me. So I started to make a decision that ultimately I had to leave, man. And at some point, I got lucky because I was able to help with the process of Mr. McDonald starting Trinity Services, getting in when he first initially started. MST, multi-systemic therapy, one of the first agencies to bring it down here to North Carolina. He was actually somebody that actually worked and seen my work, while I was at Superior, seeing what I was able to do for that agency. Brought me on real time, man, was a real mentor to me and really helped me along the way. Somewhere along the lines, man, I just kind of knew that gave me the motivation that one day I wanted to have my own practice, right? Like I hadn't been through many things in mental health, had seen many things, and I knew at some point I wanted to really set up and get back home. And that's what I did, And when I came back home, before looking for a job, before doing anything, man, I decided like, okay, I'm going back to school. Like I'm going back to school. I need to go to a school of social work to go get my master's of social work degree and do something in counseling so that I could be at least on top of my game, right? Like when I say top of the game in mental health, being somebody that could provide therapy and really understand what I was doing on a clinical level. I ended up, man, getting into the University of Southern California, which at the time was the top social work program in the nation. You can do your homework, you can look it up. I got in 2015, finished up roughly around 2017. And, at the time, man, I could just remember a lot of people telling me, like, man, you're not going to get in. I know other people that applied at the time that got a no. And for whatever reason, man, I didn't take that. Like, when I say I don't believe in letting your dreams die in your own home, I didn't, I don't really listen to a lot of that. So I applied. I took my chance, did my statement of purpose, and who knew like they would choose me, but they did. I got into one of the most prestigious schools in the, pretty much in the nation. And it was a challenge. I really had a chance to really step out and really see some different things. Working with live clients was totally different. We really did counseling live and all kind of things that you like really just sharpened me up, gave me a chance to really get on plane, go out to California and stuff like that for the first time, like all kind of stuff. That somebody coming from Hamilton, North Carolina, a kid that a vacation to me was actually just getting outside of Hamilton. Whether we went to Raleigh, whether we came to Fayetteville, I mean, look, you just got me out the North Yard. I felt like I was going somewhere big, and that's the truth. And so for me to be able to do some of the things that I've ultimately lived and done now, I can't necessarily say I always seen those as being possible, but I always dreamed that it would. And that's like me continuing to fight and not give up and work no matter what has helped me to get to this point. As we, are near closing this first one, man, I don't want to leave you on the cliffhanger. I'll give you a little bit more just about that in general. I finished that, man, and part of my goal at that particular time was I knew at some point I would be wanting to get my own practice. When I signed up and decided to go back to school, man, one of the best things ever happened to me, man, was really meeting Mr. Antoine Yelverton and Miss Vicky Yelverton. The Yelvertons, they did a lot for me, right? Like, even now I operate, as their clinical director, like, they did everything right by me. So I have no reason to do anything shady by them because they one of the few that really took a chance on me. And I remember talking to him and just kind of laying out everything I had been through with mental health and what my goal and what I wanted to do, in terms of me going back to school. I want to get licensed. One day I want to get my own practice. And I can remember telling him, like, man, people tell me all kind of things. I'm gonna see what you actually do. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna really go ahead and start to do that. And along the lines, man, I met Dr. Hare, and did some multi-systemic therapy like part time, and I was working with him, and then I became supervisor with him, working back and forth between there and Yelverton, both like kind of just trying to manage and understand what I need to do prior to me really starting in the school full time. And then once I started school full time, by that time I hadn't made a step to kind of leave C-Rep at that time, and took a leap out on faith to go with another company, and things didn't quite work out. So it was strictly me with Yelverton's Enrichment Services all the way through college, man. And when I say that, it wasn't always easy. They never like I was always getting that push and support, like, like see it through, man. Keep fighting, like don't ever give up. Like really work to do everything that you need to do. Like they always, encourage me to like just finish. And ultimately that's what I did. I end up, coming out, getting my license. I was on my associate for a couple of years. within 2 years, I was fully licensed. And the whole journey started to me really, let's really start to hone in on creating creative minds healthcare. Who knew that that would happen? And then, we hit some strange times. I really started to kind of go through the Secretary of State, get everything done, and then what happens? COVID. So everything started virtual, just having a couple of virtual clients, and they were loyal. They stuck with me. They never left me not for 1 minute. Like they always was with me and doing whatever needed to be done to make sure those sessions took place, which was easy because it was in the house for the most part. I wasn't going out. Not with all my allergies and sickness. Nah, I wasn't going out at all. So everything pretty much worked itself out, man. So along the years, man, I've just been able to just continue chasing and doing different things to evolve. The business has continued to grow. I've continued to do all kind of things, man, and it has really, the mental health field has been really rewarding to me, and even outside of that, it's allowed many opportunities for me to do some of the other things I enjoy. I enjoy spending time with my family and friends. Man, I really enjoy coaching at 71st High School as the defensive coordinator. I really enjoy spending time with my fraternal brothers for sure over Omega Psi Phi. Like I've been able to do all kind of things, man. Through and when you start to really talk about my fraternity for sure, right? Everything happens at a young age, right? Like I used to want to be around people say, yo, you want to hang around the wrong crowd, be with people in the streets and doing all kind of stuff, right? That's not necessarily what a fraternity is about. The brotherhood, right? Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. We different. We always there for each other for the most part, through ups, through downs. It's so many things I can say about the things that we do in the community. So many things I can say about how we help the youth. Me in particular, it goes deeper than just me. My line, 15 most wanted. If you just look through my line, man, you can find all kind of things from doctors, you find athletic directors. Everything that you can think of. You got instructors, you got educators, you got a principal. We have everything just on one of, like, that's just my one line that you can just reach through and kind of understand, like, we got a wide history. We got hit by some trauma, ourselves, man. We lost two of my line brothers here over the last couple of years, man. Those two hit like back to back, and that's the Boynton and Art Ward, man. It'll never, get easier, going forward without those guys. And then even more recently, one of my, mentors through everything, Colin Jean Arrington, losing him, man, that took a blow, especially when you start to get back into the swing of things of playing like a game like we did Friday night here playing against my home school in Richmond County. Yeah, we won the game, but I'm used to, like, right after the game, win or lose, man, I'm getting that call from him telling me what he's seen that maybe looked right, what he's seen that didn't look wrong, what he thought I probably could have, looked at and caught better. Sometimes you just need that extra person that's looking at things and let you know kind of what to pay attention to, and let you know that you're moving in the right direction, man. I don't necessarily have that voice, but I have many other supports, man, and I have many friends. My best friend, to this very day, still Charles Mormon. We communicate. He's coaching up there at Lexington High School. We do many, many different things, man, to really stay in contact with each other and support each other even to this very day. And just many kudos to everybody, my family, my friends, anybody that's helped me get to this particular point. Of course, I can't call out everybody for sure because I'll be on here for 3 hours for sure. But along my journey, I get a chance to know, like, really highlight everybody. One of the most important people I've been waiting so long to talk about, who I'll wrap up talking about, man, who's probably the biggest mentor in my life, man. I didn't want to waste it on other podcasts or other, like, newspaper articles or anything like that. But man, Earl Nicholson, Coach Earl Nicholson, for me, he was my wrestling coach. He was my football coach. He was everything. He was the one that seen probably the most potential in me. Really starting out, man, what made him different is simply this. He pulled me aside and said, listen, man, everybody don't like you. He told me the truth. It was some coaches even that didn't like me at that particular time. He said, but look, what you gonna do about it? Because you got to play. And if you show that you don't like them, you ain't never gonna touch the field, you ain't never gonna do anything else. Even though he tricked me into wrestling. Like he really is the force that let me quit basketball when I was out there about to try for basketball. Didn't show up for the next day. We was up there talking. He like, look, man, just look at wrestling practice. Just look at wrestling practice, see if you like it. And started just watching. He was like, hey man, don't you want to get on the mat and see? And he to this very day, I know he kind of made sure that the person I was gonna be going to give somebody I could just slam and I would like it and think it was gonna be all peaches and cream. That year was a rough year. Anytime I wrestled anybody in my age group, it was an easy win. But anybody else, I was getting towed up. But to see my growth in that sport, man, and what I ultimately became very dominant up under him was great. But he allowed me to start dreaming even bigger. These dreams I keep telling you I had. He was the first one to start taking me to like college games, right? College wrestling matches. I had opportunities to go to college for wrestling as well, but my body wasn't just going to take it anymore, right? Like I just couldn't physically. I didn't like the way my body would feel after those matches. I would be drained for days. I enjoyed it definitely in high school, and I think I more so enjoyed it because he was a part of it and not wanting to let him down. He became like that father figure in my life through high school because man, he was like my guardian angel. Whether other teachers had problems with me or said something about me, coaches, anybody, he was facing that head on for me. And it's no way I could be here without him. I'm starting with him because he's the one that was the most vital in really making sure I went to college. He stayed on me, he stayed on my grades. And like I said, man, he was very open with me about everything that was going on. If I was frustrated about why I wasn't playing more. I mean, it was times where, man, shoot, to go out in the game and get a sack almost felt like a punishment for me, right? Because I come right out the game, and that's the truth. This is probably just gonna be some of you guys' first time starting to hear some of these stories that will go on here, man. But the platform will allow, man. We're gonna have all kind of people on here telling their stories. We're gonna laugh. We're gonna joke. If we have to cry, we'll cry. We'll come up with a plan to get over it because everything is gonna get better. I'm going to push you to always chase your dream to get better. And I don't believe like nobody has to live through their kids. You got kids, they're gonna have a life that they gotta live. You got to live as well because at some point you're gonna become miserable if you're not out here having things to look forward to for yourself. And that's the truth. I plan on just really, really working with anybody that comes on here, and we're gonna do this thing together, one person at a time. Let's just try to help everybody. I thank you guys for listening to me today. I'm looking forward to what this could become. If you're interested in joining as a guest, man, definitely, send me an email. Join me on, all my social media. I make sure to start dropping those links, on Twitter. It's at Coach Hall _ at 71st. You can find me at, Eric Hall podcast.com. Have my own webpage here, or you can look at creativemindshealthcare.org. You can definitely email me at ehall at creativemindshealthcare.org. I mean, it's many different ways of really contacting me. The business have a page on Facebook that you can contact, and then ultimately you can message me on my private page on Facebook. Whatever we need to do, man, to really connect and get this thing moving in the right direction. I'm open to it. I'm looking forward to working with you. Enjoy the rest of your day.